Okay, moving on to the last page. Number 3, the percent of students that eat breakfast is 63.8%. So remember that percent is out of 100. So if we were to draw a picture, these are all of the students. 63 is a little bit over half. So that means that this many, 63.8%, eat breakfast. That means that whatever is left over does not eat breakfast. So we need to find out what is left over. We don't know what this is. But again, we do know that the total amount is 100. So all of this has to add up to 100. So to find the missing percent, we take 100 and we subtract out what we know. Now remember, please, big number goes first. Big minus small. 100, we have to write that as a decimal. So again, if you were to have $100, it'd be 100.00. We don't need the extra O. And so we're going to subtract 63.8. Okay. We now need to borrow. So we're going to borrow. That becomes a 10. This becomes a 9. This becomes a 9. And that becomes a 0. 10 minus 8 is 2. 9 minus 3 is 6. And 9 minus 6 is 3. So here you should have had 36.2%. And these are the people who don't want to eat breakfast. Do not eat breakfast. Okay? We come down here and it says if there are 482 total students, how many students don't eat breakfast? So I don't want this number. This number is how many people do eat breakfast. I want the people who don't eat breakfast. So we're going to actually use this number, that 36.2%, to do this problem. Now remember, percent of total. We have talked about this since the first couple of weeks of school. We did tip, tax, and discount problems where percent was used. Remember, when you have a percent problem, you are always going to use the word of. Of means to multiply. So we're going to take that 36.2%. We're going to multiply it by the total. The total numbers of students is 482. So we're going to actually change, remember we have to change this into a decimal. To change a percent into a decimal, we have to move the decimal 2 times. So I'm going to take 0.362 and multiply it by 482. You are not allowed to drop that 2. Now, when you multiply, you're going to do 482,362 with a decimal here. Please remember that when you multiply this out, that on the second and third row that you are adding x's. So I'm going to go ahead and hit pause and multiply this out and see what we get. Okay, so I multiplied it out. Notice no x's on the first row, 1 x on the second row, and 2 x's on the second row. That means this is the ones place, so the ones place has to go in the ones place. This is the tens place. The tens place has to start in the tens place, why we have the x here. This is the 100ths place, so therefore our numbers need to start in the 100ths place, and that's why we have the 2 x's down below. We had 3 decimal places, 1, 2, and 3, so we move the decimal over 3 times. Now, we can't have part of a student. So again, these are students. So we have 174.48. You can either write the answer as 174 or you can write it as 175. Either one I will accept. Okay? Moving on, list the 4 types of sampling we learned about and give an example. So one of them that we talked about was convenience sampling. We also talked about systematic. We talked about voluntary. And we talked about random. Convenience, again, a lot of you guys gave me definitions. I did not want definitions. I wanted you guys to actually give me an example. Convenience, again, is being lazy. And a lot of you guys did put that down, but that's not an example. That's just telling me that you're being lazy. So convenience would be talking to like your friends, talking to people who are only in the 7th grade. Another one would be only talking to people in your neighborhood, talking to just your family. Something, again, that is convenient for you. But again, I want specific examples, not just that it's convenient for you and that it's lazy, okay? Systematic, again, this means you have a system or a pattern. That means that you're going to talk to people maybe every 5 minutes. Every 5 minutes, whoever comes to that door, I'm going to talk to them and ask them a question. You can also do it based on every 5th person in line, every 4th person in line. Voluntary means that you give them the option to either reply yes or no or answer the survey. Random. Again, a lot of you guys told me that people were picked at random, which is correct, but you need to give me an example. So some of the examples we talked about was using a die or a raffle or using a number generator, things like that. Those are all examples of random types of sampling. Next, I asked you to put them into categories, either biased or unbiased. And remember, I told you to think opposite. Is really, it's either fair or unfair. So is fair. These are all of the sampling that is fair. Biased, because it doesn't have an in front, we need to put an in front. So biased are unfair, the ones that are not going to give us accurate results. So out of all of these right here, convenience and voluntary is actually biased. Those are not fair. Convenience and voluntary. And then, of course, the other two are fair. So systematic, because you don't know who you're picking if you're doing it systematic. You know you're picking every 4th person or something like that, but you don't know who the person is. And then, of course, random is totally fair. Okay? So again, please make sure that you take the time to look over these and then come in to retake your test when you're ready.